Hello and welcome. I'm Claire Feldman, your host and guide on this journey to thriving in private practice without the burnout. Are you a passionate therapist who's struggling with the entrepreneurial side of things? Do you wish you could serve great fit clients at times that suit you? Are you seeking financial stability so you can continue doing what you love? If so, then you're in the right place. My own journey started back in 2012 when I qualified as a CBT therapist. I've experienced the challenges of setting up a private practice, from accommodating clients at all hours to dealing with unclear policies and undercharging for my services. It was a tough road, but it led me to where I am today, a successful eating disorder practitioner who has learned not only to value my work, but also to connect with my dream clients. I know firsthand the difficulties of navigating the business aspects of therapy, from building a website to managing social media. But I've made the mistake so you don't have to. Together, we'll explore how you can build and grow your dream practice. So let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Prosper in Private Practice podcast. And this episode is called Marketing Plan 101, and as the name suggests, it's intended to help you really start to think about what your marketing strategy is when you're opening a private practice. So on the last episode, we talked a little bit about really, I suppose, thinking a bit more like a CEO and adapting a CEO mindset when it comes to opening your private practice. And rather than going gun-ho and straight into just writing directory profiles and trying to find an office space to rent, before you do anything, what you really need to do is spend some time getting really clear on what your vision is for your private practice, what your long-term objectives are for the practice, and then really getting clear on certain things like who your ideal client is, who it is that you're going to be targeting in your marketing, what your unique selling proposition is going to be, and what your business model is going to look like, whether you're going to be working on a one-to-one basis or on a group basis, whether you're going to be working face-to-face or whether you're going to be working online. That it's really, really important to get clear on all of that stuff from the beginning, so that when you're then thinking about your marketing plan, that you can ensure that your marketing plan is actually aligned with your business strategy and your objectives. So hopefully if you had a chance to listen to that little episode. If not, you can go back and listen to that now. It's episode 3. And then, so what we're going to talk about today is really a continuation on from that, around how do you then start to think about your marketing, like where are you going to market your private practice, and how can you really craft and curate your messaging to really speak to your ideal client. So I guess then the really obvious place to start is to get really clear on who your ideal client is. And quite often when I'm working with my mentoring clients and I ask them, who their ideal client is, what I'll tend to get back is maybe like quite a generic type of answer in terms of like a demographic or an age of client. But what we need to do really is drill down and get really specific and get much more detail around your ideal client. So yes, we want to have an idea of what gender they are, what age they are, perhaps what socioeconomic bracket they might be in, all of those kinds of things. You want to have an idea of. But when we talk about ideal client, we're getting down into the real specifics of the type of problems or the type of issues, the type of presentations that you really enjoy working with, or that you get great satisfaction working with, or that you get the best outcomes working with. If you're not sure what that is right now, you're not sure what your ideal client is, you can kind of think about things like either maybe reflecting back on clients that you've already worked with in the past, and even just considering like what clients really stick out in your mind, what clients did you really enjoy working with, and are there similarities in their issues or their presentations. And that might be helpful in kind of getting you to start thinking about what types of issues and people that you really enjoy working with. If you maybe haven't even started seeing clients yet, it might be an area that perhaps you have a special interest in, or something that you have personal experience in. So if you've had a personal difficulty that perhaps you have overcome yourself, that might be an area that you want to explore as your niche. Or it could be that you have no specific area of kind of personal interest or personal experience in something, but that you know that there's definitely a need in the market for a therapist in this type of area. So that might be, for example, we know there's always demand in eating disorders or OCD, or maybe more recently working with neurodivergence. So it could be that you're looking at an area that you know is in high demand. And so when you're thinking about your ideal client, we want to ensure that any marketing you do, regardless of whether that is your directory profile, your website, your social media, like whatever it is that you choose to market your private practice, that your content must speak directly to your ideal client. And in order for your content to speak to your ideal client, you need to have understanding and insight to how your client feels. And I know that this is something that we can be, as therapists, that we can be excellent at, and that we can be incredibly empathic and have deep understanding of our clients. But somehow when we go to then put that into our marketing, it gets lost. I think we become fearful around marketing, that we build it up to be something much greater than it is, that we get scared about visibility, we get scared about perhaps saying the wrong thing or being judged. And so our messaging tends to get really watered down. Or when we think about marketing, we assume what we assume our clients will want to see and what our clients actually do want to see are two very different things. So I think a lot of us tend to operate with counselor and therapist hats on. And so when we're writing our directory profiles or our websites, we're doing it with our professional hat on, and we're maybe detailing things like how many years experience we have, what accreditation body we are with, all the different courses that we have attended. And I think we also have a tendency to go in and almost do like a copy and paste of each other's profiles. And so the standard seems to be that there will be, that comment of, I offer a warm, safe and non-judgmental space. And it's like a rite of passage that every single directory profile has that statement on it. But I really want to challenge you around that. That's a little bit of a triggering statement, that one for me on profiles, because what does it actually mean? Does it actually matter or mean something to your client? I would say I'd go with the assumption that most clients will expect to be coming to you and not being judged, and for it to be a confidential space. So for me, it's sort of like you're stating the obvious there. And the same goes for qualifications. On most directory profiles, there's a separate space for qualifications, and you're just utilizing that precious space, detailing qualifications that, again, does your ideal client really care? In some cases, they might, because they might be looking for a specific modality. But I would say in most cases, they don't care what your qualifications are. They just want to be able to see your profile and feel that you understand and that you get the difficulties that they're having and that you can help them. The modality and way in which you do that is something that is sort of secondary. It's not a huge concern to your ideal client. Because you've got to remember that most clients won't actually know the difference between psychodynamic or CBT or psychoanalytic. Like, they won't understand that. They won't really care. They just want to know that you get them, that you understand their difficulties, and that you can help them. So when we're really trying to craft authentic messaging, we want to be able to create messages that your ideal client is potentially going to read and have a sense of, oh my God, that's me. You want them to read the first paragraph on your directory profile or your post on social media, and it resonate with them and they see themselves in that. So you've got to get really clear on who your ideal client is and almost imagine yourself being in their shoes for the day and imagining what they're doing, imagining what it is that they're struggling with, how it feels to be them with these difficulties in their life, really feeling and getting how these difficulties might be holding them back, how it might be affecting their day-to-day life, how it might be affecting the relationships that they have around them, and thinking about how would they be describing that to you. If they had a discovery call with you, what sorts of things would they be saying to you? In what kind of words would they be using? Because again, the language that your client uses when they're talking about their difficulties is completely different from the language that we're taught in our studies. And so we need to ensure that our messaging is in their language, that it's simple, it's clear, and it's effective. So really stepping into your ideal client's shoes, maybe doing a little exercise where you are kind of thinking about how would they describe their difficulties? How would they say it affects them? How would they say it interferes with their day-to-day life? And that you spend some time maybe writing that down, because they're the sorts of things that will, when you put those into your profile, your website, when you put those into your messaging, your ideal client will see that and they will feel that you understand them and that you get them. And that is so important for building up what we call this know, like, and trust factor, that your ideal client will see that and believe that you absolutely understand what it is that they're going through. And building up that know, like, and trust factor is so important nowadays in a potential client making a decision around what therapist that they want to work with. I think gone are the days now when it used to be that you could just create a directory profile and inquiries would come flooding in, or setting up a website and inquiries would come flooding in. We live in different times now. Like, we know that we are fairly saturated in terms of having therapists going into private practice simply because there is a lack of well-paid jobs for counsellors to go into, or that so many counsellors just don't meet the pre-qualifying criteria that some organisations will set. So there's a lot more counsellors and therapists that are setting up in private practice. So when you take that and also add into the mix the fact that we are in a current economic crisis, people are being much more reflective and giving much more consideration to where they're going to spend their money. And it doesn't mean that they are not going to invest in therapy. There will still be people investing in therapy, but they're likely to do much more research, much more investigation, maybe book much more discovery calls and comparisons, and be much more considered in who they are going to work with. So that's where it's our role to not be complacent and not just assume that we can throw up a directory profile and that that's going to be sufficient. We have to start treating this now like this is a business, and part of the business is marketing, and that we have to just simply accept that we have to become more confident and more skilled in marketing ourselves and marketing our private practice. And I totally get that that feels incredibly daunting, but it's like any skill that it can be developed and it can be mastered. And also you can find ways of marketing yourself that you feel more comfortable with. It doesn't mean that you have to be doing silly dances and pointing your fingers, although I do like a wee silly dance and a wee point of my fingers. Sometimes on reels, I don't mind, making a bit of a fool of myself sometimes. But if that is your idea of hell, you don't have to do that. There are other ways to be creative around your marketing and other things that you can do. So let's have a look at what some of those different marketing channels could be. So that could be that you use, in addition to like the really obvious ones, which is having a directory profile and having, say, a website. Other ways of marketing yourself could be through social media. So that could be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. It could be content marketing. So that's really in all the things like your blog writing that you might do. Or it could be email marketing. So this is something that I think a lot of therapists think doesn't apply to them, but actually can be really, really helpful in building a kind of a long-term sustainable practice. So email marketing is basically where on your website that you will be inviting someone to sign up to your email list, usually in exchange for something free, maybe like a free ebook or a PDF or an audio of some description or free workshop, that they'll sign up to your email list. And generally it will be that they are potentially an ideal client because they will have difficulties in the area that you specialize in. And then once they're on your email list, what your role is then is to look after them and to nurture them and to maybe send information that might be helpful to them in order for them to stay on your list. Because what we have to remember is that some people will know they want therapy and they want to invest in therapy, but some people might be undecided. Some people might recognize that they do need help, but they're not in a place where they want to seek it. So actually having all of those types of people on your list means that perhaps at some point in the future, once they've got to know you much better through your emails and through your content, that they may decide to invest in therapy with you in the future. Or if you 6 months or a year or 2 years into your private practice decide that you're going to start diversifying your income and that you're going to start running workshops, for example, well, if you have a whole email list of people who are potentially your ideal clients, you have an audience that you could be selling your workshops or your events to. So email marketing often gets overlooked, but I think for a long-term strategy is a brilliant thing to do, because your email list is something that you actually own, whereas your Facebook, your Twitter, all of those things could really get shut down or taken away at a moment's notice. Which is why for me, like, my email list will be something that I'm very precious around. It could be networking, could be that you put your attention and your efforts into connecting, getting to know lots of other counsellors within your area, building up relationships with them in order to receive referrals perhaps from them. Or it could be something like a podcast, that you could start a podcast specifically to help people within your niche area, and that you could be focused on really trying to grow an audience through your podcast. And that again, potentially those podcast listeners, you could be encouraging them to directing them to your website, directing them to other services, directing them onto your email list, for example. So there's lots of different ways that you can market yourself. And so when you're thinking about, what channels are you going to choose and what platforms are you going to choose, I suppose the first thing would be to consider, like, who is your ideal client? What age are they? And where are they most likely to be hanging out? So if you are working with kind of the younger population, and I have no idea whether a Gen X, Z, Y, like, I'm lost with all of that stuff. So say, your ideal client is like somebody young, like under 20 or something like that. Like, the chances are that your young client is going to be on somewhere like TikTok. So it might be that you want to think about doing some marketing activities on TikTok. Or if it's somebody, I don't know, like my age in their 40s, it might be that they're more likely to be on Facebook or Instagram. So you might choose one of those platforms. It might be that you are like, I feel sick to my stomach of, the thought of being on Instagram, the thought of sharing my photo, the thought of doing a reel or any of that, if that makes you feel sick to your stomach, then there is things like blog writing and email marketing. The only thing that I would say is I would try to give, certainly in the beginning, I would try and give more things a go and see how you get on with them. And if you really, really don't like them, after you've given yourself maybe like a good couple of months of, trying out these platforms and working on these platforms, if you really despise them still at the end of that period of time, then that's fine. You might want to drop it, but you might find that you actually like using it, or you might find that you were building it up in your mind to be something really huge, and actually it's okay. So especially with things like Instagram and Facebook, for me it's more so Instagram. I prefer using Instagram. But Instagram is a great way of actually potential clients just kind of getting to know you a little bit more. So they'll see you in kind of the professional light on your profile and on your website. And I think that on your Instagram, it gets, it allows potential clients to get to know, I guess, a little bit more of you in terms of your personality and kind of what you're passionate about. It's an opportunity for you to share a little bit about yourself. And again, when we're talking about this know, like, and trust factor, I think nowadays, that is what people are looking for. If they're having a difficulty, they want to do their research and find someone who really understands them, who really gets them, that they feel that they can work well with, that they feel that they connect with. And so maybe getting a little bit of sense of you, what you look like, what your voice sounds like, that all those things might actually really matter. So I wouldn't rule out things like your Instagram or your Facebook straight away. I would say just try and work on it, develop it a little bit, give it a go, but also know that you do have other options there other than just social media. But in the beginning, I would encourage you to definitely try a few different options, and then perhaps once you've given them all a really good go, that you might be wanting to kind of narrow it down to what platforms you feel the most benefit from, the ones that get the most reach for you, the ones that you feel comfortable using, the ones that you know that you're able to be there with some degree of consistency, and you'll find your way with what that looks like. So, for me personally, Instagram is kind of one of my preferred places. And now podcasting is something else, because it means like I'm sitting here in my gym gear, unwashed hair, no makeup on, but I can still create content. I can still do something. So podcasting is something that kind of works for me, because if I had to then start thinking about washing my hair or putting some makeup on to go on video, I'd probably go, can't be bothered, and wouldn't do it. So podcasting is one that I really like. So you need to maybe give some thought to your ideal client. Where are they most likely to hang out? Where are they most likely to consume my content? And then give yourself a good 3 months of trying these platforms and seeing which ones really resonate with you, which ones are getting a good response potentially, which ones are seeing the best growth. And there's lots of different ways that you can measure these types of things. If you have email marketing, for example, you would be measuring things like the open rate of your emails to see whether your emails are, creating an interest with your ideal client, whether they like the content of it. The open rate is a good indication of that. If you have a podcast, how many podcast downloads you're getting is another good indication of that. But I suppose ultimately, the way that you will measure the success of your marketing efforts, although that can be tricky to really figure out in the early days, is when you start to get inquiries, when you start to get calls coming through, discovery calls and bookings coming through, it's really important for you to actually be asking, how did you find out about me? Because they'll be able to tell you, was it a personal recommendation? Was it a Google search? Did they read a blog and end up on your site? And that stuff's really, really good to know, and maybe even track, on a little spreadsheet or something like that, that if you can track it, then you can start to see actually where most of your inquiries are coming through. from, and that'll give you a little bit of insight into what marketing efforts are really working for you and what things maybe aren't being so effective. And I know marketing is something that we can find very uncomfortable, and I feel really kind of passionate about trying to help counsellors and therapists, learn to see it as number one, part and parcel of having a business and having a private practice, but perhaps it can be something that can become enjoyable. It's something that can become fun when you feel aligned with what it is that you're doing, that actually learning new skills and trying out new things like writing a blog and things like that, this can actually be fun. You can experiment with it, you can try things out, try different ways of crafting your message, and make it something that actually is enjoyable to do, that it doesn't need to feel icky, it doesn't need to feel uncomfortable, it certainly does not need to feel pushy or salesy in any way. You're just simply trying to create a relationship with your audience. You're trying to demonstrate that you understand your ideal client and that you can help them. And you use your messaging, your content marketing, your blogs, your social media posts, your reels, your emails, like whatever methods of marketing that you're using. That's actually how you're demonstrating that. You're demonstrating your knowledge, your expertise, your empathy, your understanding. All of that is coming across in your messaging. So there is no pushy sales that's required, that actually you want your ideal client to be able to consume this content, consume this messaging, build up this know, like, and trust factor. So when they get to the stage potentially of booking a discovery call with you, that they already maybe have a fairly good idea that you are the person that they want to work with. So all the stuff that you've done in the background, in terms of your marketing, is doing a lot of that work for you. So there is absolutely no need that you have to try and convince potential clients that you might be the right person to work for them. So I hope that's maybe given you a little bit of maybe a different perspective on what marketing actually is, taking that pressure off yourself, that it isn't about, trying to trick people or trying to convince people into doing something. It's about just you communicating what you do and how you do it in a very authentic way. And the people that are right for you will find their way to you. So that's it for today. I hope that you have found this episode helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.